A Hit of Heaven by E.H. Amos. Resentment lingered above the dinner table when a piece of heaven, declared a Class A drug just yesterday, materialized in the mashed potatoes. Marissa, who had never taken the drug but was an activist for its legalization, felt the effects immediately. She gasped in delight, knowing she would never be the same again. Neil, her husband, who had vowed never to take the drug and was just appointed head of his own divine containment unit, felt the effects moments later. He gasped in horror, his stomach twisting at the realization that the life he had built for his family had just ended. He knew it because his exposure brought forth one question he swore never to ask. "Am I doing the right thing, Mary?" Neil said, his voice rising with caution. "Get away from that thing. Hurry." She stood up from the table and took a casual, listless step away from it. The golden glow of the rock's hard corners and edges softened against her face as she slowly retreated. When it was completely gone, she realized what had just happened. "Neil, you—" she started. "I felt it," he said, his voice trembling. "I felt it, Mary. We're gonna lose everything." Neil looked around at his living room. There was a piano, beautiful and expensive, whose black exterior had been coated with the finest layer of dust. There was a microphone, the top-rated one from the store, still in its box next to the desktop computer. There was a green screen rolled up and jammed into a corner. The space was brimming with unmet potential and smelled of unfinished dreams. None of them would get the chance to flourish now. "Now calm down," Mary said, her voice steadier than she felt. She edged carefully around the table to keep from stepping in the stone's glow. "It was barely a second, Neil. Your reflexes saved you." She was sounding less sure by the word. "Doesn't matter," Neil said, shaking his head and gripping the counter behind him so tight his knuckles turned white. "Mary, I'm gonna go to prison." "No, you aren't," she snapped. "Get your head back on." Neil flinched at the words, but took inventory of the space around him. He looked around his house, the kitchen, and at himself. He scooted away from the dinner table and took several steps out of the kitchen with his wife. Neil pulled his cell phone out of his pocket. "Wait," Mary said, taking the phone from him. "You realize what they'll do to us if you tell them we were just exposed?" "Yeah," Neil said, his fear dissolving into anger. "Your people are going to praise you. Mine are going to put me in a cell." "We'd both go in that cell," Mary countered. "And I've been a proud advocate for heaven because I haven't tried it. When people find out I felt the glow, all my credibility will be gone. Everything I've worked for." "And everything I've worked for," Neil said. "I gotta call my unit. Get them to come here and quarantine this place. Save my legacy by giving myself up." He turned to look at Mary. "You too, Mary. We both say it just appeared right there on the table and there wasn't anything we could have done about it. That's the truth." "Does the truth matter?" Mary asked. Neil frowned. "Listen to yourself, Mary. Does the truth matter? Of course it matters." "How many times have you lied, Neil?" "I don't know. It's not like I count them all." "You count the ones that get people killed." Neil felt his guts twitch like she had just hit him. "You have to," she continued. "I know who you are, and you either know that number, Neil, or I don't know you anymore. How many people told the truth and you spread a lie instead?" There was silence in the air, heavy and foul. Neil felt shame, but it quickly turned to fury. "You think I wanted to do that?" he asked. "You think I enjoyed ruining lives for the greater good?" "That's not the point," she said. "The point is that we will be smeared out there." She pointed at the front door. "You think your pals out there are going to come in here, see that," she swung her arm to point at the glowing mashed potatoes, "and just decide that it was a whoopsie-daisy and let us go? They will lie and lie and lie to make us look like whatever pushes the narrative harder." "Because it's dangerous, Mary. Why can't you see that?" "Did it hurt then?" Mary asked, putting her hands on her hips like she would be waiting a while for the right answer. "Go on, Neil. Tell me how awful it felt." "And you think heroin doesn't feel that way too?" Neil asked. "Makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside until you walk away from it? It's a drug, Marissa. A dangerous one." "Are you a danger now?" Mary asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Are you dangerous to me now, Neil, since you've been exposed to the glow? Are we going to step outside there and go on a killing spree together? Isn't that how this works?" "Maybe," Neil said, but he didn't sound convinced by his own argument. "We don't know enough about it. What if it, cuts your lifespan in half?" "Would you volunteer half your life away if you knew the other half would always be happy?" Mary asked. "Because I sure would." "Struggle makes us who we are." "Struggle is only there because we think it's fair, somehow, to keep fulfillment just out of reach until you've earned it. But who decides when you suffered enough to get what you want? If we could live without struggling, no one would willingly choose the struggle." "They would," Neil said. "I did, these last 3 years." "Was our marriage that bad?" Mary asked. "I was talking about since the first bit of heaven showed up in that case in Colorado," Neil said. "The formation of the DCU, my new job, all of that. Why did you think our marriage was what I meant? Do you think that I'm unhappy?" "You just told me you were unhappy, that you're choosing the struggle over happiness." "That is not what I meant," Neil almost shouted, pointing at her. "And you know it. Just because that thing..." He subconsciously took a step towards the glowing shape and pointed at it. The glow was cast on the tip of his finger. He yanked his hand back like he'd been burned. "If you get to touch it again, so do I," Mary said, walking over to the table. "Mary, stop," Neil said. "That was an accident." But Mary wasn't listening. She stepped forward, letting the glow caress her from head to toe. Neil wrapped his arms around her to pull her back from it, but he felt the glow, too. He thought about how warm and comfortable he was, hugging his wife from behind, just enjoying loving her and being in love with her, remembering all the good times they had together. He could almost swear he was hearing music that made him want to sway, to try to get Mary to dance with him as they basked in the euphoric glow. Neil yanked. He and Mary tumbled to the living room floor, out of reach of the glowing, hard-angled stone. "Neil," Mary whispered. "Neil, that was beautiful. I felt everything you were feeling." "Mary, Neil tried to start, but he knew there were no true words he could say to disparage the moment they'd just had. "It was. We were." "We're not that old yet," Mary said with a laugh. Neil chuckled. He stood up, helped his wife up from the floor, and hugged her again. "Now you see why this needs to be public, legalized, given to the masses," Mary said with a smile. Neil felt his own smile falter and droop into disgust. "You still think it isn't dangerous," he said, only just now realizing the truth of the words he was saying aloud. "And you still think it is?" Mary asked, incredulous. "After that? How could you think that was a bad thing?" "Because it wasn't real. It was just memories." "That's all our relationship is, isn't it?" Mary asked, looking back at the stone. "Just memories of the times we've spent together. If that thing," she waved at the stone, "can make you happy through your own memories and not through some dopamine hijacking, then what's the problem with it?" "You'll need it all the time. You'll be like the people in Australia making jewelry out of it so you never have to go without touching it." "It never runs out. If you could wear a ring that would make you happy the rest of your life, would you? If all you had to do was wear it?" "It's my job," Neil said, desperation in his voice. "Whether or not I call this in, we both go to prison. Or we start running right now and never look back." Mary turned around, hope in her eyes. "Let's pack our bags," she said. Neil laughed. Mary did not. "You're serious?" Neil said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You weren't?" Mary asked, the hope draining out of her eyes. "No, Mary, I wasn't. I was giving you such a wild and stupid plan for us to follow that you'd understand we don't have a choice in what we do next." "But we do. You just said it. We could run." "That would ruin all the work you've done," Neil said, pointing at her as if he had finally caught her in some kind of lie. "You said so yourself. And now you're willing to throw it all away so you can get high on that rock." "No," she said, her features twisting into anger and hurt. "That's what you said. You said we're going to prison now no matter what happens, so I figured, hey, if our lives are already ruined, why not just run with it? And now you want to tell me that my life isn't already ruined just because I decided to eat dinner at the table across from you for once in 2 years?" "I didn't ask you to come sit with me this time," Neil growled. "You said you wanted to talk to me, so it's technically your fault that we both got exposed." "You were the one who said we should have important talks at the dinner table. I just wanted to tell you over the phone." "What is it, Mary?" Neil asked, his tone rude and mocking. "Are you sick? Are you dying, Mary? Or, oh, I bet the big news is that you're pregnant." "I want a divorce," Mary said. The tension in the room vanished. Neil knew it was a trick of the mind, but he could have sworn the glow from the chunk of heaven and their food dimmed a bit. The room had felt like it was growing louder and smaller all at the same time, but now it just felt empty. A place that was just home to Neil was suddenly full of memories. The piano wasn't a decoration. They had dreams of putting out an album. With his voice and Mary's talent on the keys, they could have been something real, if only they had just tried instead of waiting. There was the nice microphone they bought for the podcast they were still waiting to start making. And there, rolled up in the corner, the green screen from when they were making short films, and had decided to wait for the right moment on that as well. Waiting, always waiting. They were always waiting for everything. They waited and waited until waiting became the wisest option. Then they waited some more until it became the only option. Neil was tired of it. He knew they'd do it again, too. They'd wait and argue about what to do now until the police showed up and made the decision for them. "Would you go without me?" Neil asked. "What?" "If we were really going to run away, would you have left me somewhere?" "No, why would I?" Neil shrugged. "I thought you didn't love me anymore." "I love you too much," Mary said, her voice soft. "Neil, our lives have always been different. We just never realized we'd have to face those differences like this, so close with so little time to think about it. I want you in my life for the rest of my life, but I don't want the rest of my life to be with the head of a DCU who thinks my passion is just another dangerous party drug. You'll always see me as a druggie, no matter the fact I never use." "I never saw you that way," Neil said. "But you will now," Mary said. "And you'll always look at yourself as one too." "There really isn't anything we can do about this, is there?" "I don't think there is. I can think of one thing, but—" "I can't, Mary," Neil whispered. "It's not the right thing to do." "When will it be?" she asked. "When being happy puts you under suspicion? When a casual smile because you thought of me makes your colleagues think you're secretly using behind their backs?" "I don't know," Neil said, sighing and closing his eyes. "I'll know it when I see it, but right now I just don't." "Then you don't have to," Mary said, reaching up to caress Neil's face in her hands. His stubble was rough, like sandpaper, and he looked her in the eye while she held him. Her eyes flicked down to his lips before she pulled him in for a quick kiss. "But I'm leaving," she whispered against his lips. She stepped away. Neil was nodding. "I know," he said, tears silently rolling down his face. "Take it with you." "What?" she said. "Grab the heaven and run. I'll call it in after you're gone." "I don't want it," she said. "I want you. I want us to leave without it." This time it was Neil's turn to say, "What?" "I wanted us to run together, to leave it behind and just go, just me and you." "I thought you wanted the glow." "I've never wanted anything more than I've wanted you," Mary said. "Why did you think I married a DCU greenhorn when I'm for legalization?" "Because I was young and handsome?" Neil said with a smile, his cheeks giving his tears an extra obstacle on their way down his face. "We had the easiest choice in the world right in front of us, and I'm tired of waiting on making it," Mary said. "So decide if you want to go to prison for something that wasn't your fault. If you want to have all those years of service forgotten, or if you want to be with me for however much time we have left." She smiled and kissed him again, this time deeper and with more passion. "So pack your bags. We don't have long." Mary turned and ran up the stairs to their bedroom. Neil looked back at the hit of heaven still embedded in the mashed potatoes. Here was the very thing he swore to contain, invading his house and tearing his life apart. Yet, they were leaving it behind and clinging to their love for each other instead of the glow. Maybe it isn't such a bad thing after all, Neil thought, not remembering when exactly he had stepped into its glow again. Maybe this has a chance to heal the world, to fix some of it. He looked at the little piece glowing in his palm, and maybe it can heal us, too. He stuck the pebble in his pocket and rushed upstairs to help Mary pack for their escape.